how do we evaluate this attempt, what they wanted to do to the person? Amar Rav Chisda bebal. Rav Chisda says, you look at the husband's, you look at what the loss they wanted to do to the husband. As we said yesterday, the husband has the ability to, while he's married, technically, I mean, there's a certain value that he could get for selling his rights to that field that he designated in the ketubah. But let's say there's an investor that would go in and come up to the husband and say, "I'd be happy to give you." Let's say we said there was the ketubah, the value of the ketubah, let's say was $10,000. There's an investor that we're willing to give him $5,000 with the opportunity of making $5,000, or the opportunity of losing his $5,000 that he invested. He will win. The investor will win if the husband will outlive his wife, not get divorced, and he will lose if what did Nathan? He will lose if what will happen is if the husband divorces the wife, or the husband passes away before the wife, what will happen as a result of that is that there'll be a payout to the wife, and therefore the investor lost because the investor took the position of the husband. That's what we said in the Gemara, correct? Anybody have any questions on what we said until now? Any questions? Okay. So the Gemara says that's Rav Chisda, the Baal. Because now saying that he divorced his wife, the husband lost that privilege of selling, that ability to sell to an investor. Because the investor is only buying with the hope that the husband did not divorce his wife. So that's the opinion. And I think I said we saw that the Rambam says that if he would have sold it to somebody, he would have to rewrite another ksuba to his wife, because now there's no incentive for the husband not to divorce his wife, because he already will not cause him any financial loss, because he already got money he already sold his rights to of keeping the property. Now that's Rav Chisda Babal. Rav Nosson Bar Oshia Omer, the next rabbi says, the Isha. You look at the woman, and now what does that mean? So now this is what we need to explain. We didn't get into this. We gave half the explanation yesterday, but now we have to do the other half. We said the woman also has the ability to sell to an investor, that if someone would want to take her position in her rights, her possible rights of collecting, she has a possible ability to collect money if the husband dies. She has ability to collect money, the ketubah, the $10,000 that's in the ketubah, she would collect if the husband dies, or if she gets divorced. Now, she could sell that when she's married, technically, if she would sell that to a buyer who would want to buy her rights. So if the face value of the ketubah is $10,000, how much would a person give her for the ability to take her position of possibly making the $10,000 from the husband? So the person, let's say, would give $4,000, give me a musha. They wouldn't give as much as the husband would get to his end of the deal, because the woman, because like we said, when the husband has the property, the investor will eat the fruits of the property until anything happens. But here, the guy buying the position of the wife does not have any rights to eat any fruits of any property, because the fruits of the property is still by the husband's rights as long as they're married or not divorced. Therefore, she will get someone who wants to take her position, hoping that, let's say, the husband would pass away before the wife, or chas v'shalom, a divorce. So she can get a certain amount of money. So now, the obvious question Rashi points out: why would we evaluate that? The witnesses were not trying to make her lose her position. The witnesses were trying to make the husband lose his position. They were trying to make the husband say that the husband divorced his wife. As a result of that, the husband loses the ability to sell his position on the ketubah, because as long as he's not divorced, technically there's a value someone would want to take his position. But what about this wife's position? what does the Gemara mean that you'll evaluate by what the woman could get for her end of the deal? How does that have anything to do with what the witnesses wanted to cause to who did the witnesses want to cause a loss to? To the woman or the husband? The husband. The woman, they wanted to make a great gain for the woman. They wanted her to collect her ketubah. They said the husband divorced his wife, and as a result of that, there would be an obligation, a $10,000 obligation. Let's say we're just using numbers. So they wanted to cause a loss to who, Nathan? To the husband. So what's the Isha? What are we evaluating with the woman? What is a woman's ability, what she could have done with her ketubah, with her ability of possible collection, have to do with any evaluation of what the witnesses, right, Morris, wanted to do to the husband? Mr. Haber, is that a good question? A valid question? Everyone buys the question? It's a little, Jaime, it's a good question. So the way Rashi understands the Gemara is the following. Rashi says like this: the husband, technically, is there a value to the husband of paying her ketubah? Let's say paying the ketubah right now. Would a husband be willing, technically, to a married man, would he be willing to give his wife a certain amount of money, not to take off the possible obligation of paying a ketubah? There's a possibility that he's going to lose $10,000 if he passes away first. And let's say there's a possibility, and the possibility he's going to lose the $10,000 if he Chas v'shalom divorces his wife. Those are the two possibilities. The husband might say, you know what, to his wife, I'm happy to pay $4,000 to my wife for that possibility, that in order that I should not have to have that possible exposure of that $10,000 in the future. It has value to him to take away his obligation of ketubah. Discounts it, right? So he technically would be willing to technically give money for that ability to pay off that value. Based on that, so when the witnesses come and say, "Sir Reuven, you owe her ketubah," that's what they came and they say. They falsely said that you divorced your wife. They framed him and they said you have to pay the ketubah. And now, as a result of that, they wanted to cause him that $10,000 loss. Is that really a $10,000 loss they wanted to cause him? He's willing to pay $4,000 right now to pay off as a married man. As a married man, not divorced, he's willing to give her $4,000. He's not willing to give her $10,000, the value of the ketubah as a married man, because as a married man, he has no responsibility to pay ketubah. Ketubah is only after he divorces, if he divorces before he dies. But as a married man, happily married guy, you say to the guy, would you want to pay $4,000 for the rights of it? You won't have this possible obligation to pay. It's a good deal. You might say he'd be happy to do it. I don't know, whatever. Based on that, so we're not going to look at it as a $10,000 loss that they want. They're going to go $10,000 minus $4,000, because he himself is willing to give $4,000 to take his responsibility to go off, and that's what they want them to. They want them to pay 10. He would be willing to pay as a married man how much? 4. So how much does he have to pay? How much the witness have to pay? $6,000. That would be when we say B'isha, and that's gonna be how we would evaluate the loss that they wanted to cause to the what? To the woman. And that's gonna be the halacha. The halacha is gonna be, that's how we're going to estimate it. And that's gonna and as Rashi points out, and that's going to be a nice hefty payment that the witnesses are going to have to pay to the husband. Now, then the Gemara says, now we have Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa said, see the power of the learning just knocks out the cheese. They knock the wind out of that piece of the chair. You see that? It says that Torah is like a fire, but okay. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Papa b'isha u'b'tubata. But Rav Papa limits this evaluation, what we spoke about yesterday, it's based on what the woman, we deduct what the woman would have gotten for the ketubah, but we only look about ubektubata, only properties that were written in the ketubah. Jaime asked the question yesterday. We said that the only thing that we're going to evaluate against the witnesses who came to frame is only the amounts that are written in the ketubah. So whatever's written in the ketubah, the witnesses should know about. When you go in and you testify about somebody and you say that he divorced his wife, so you know there's a document here that says how much money there would be, the consequences of a divorce, how much money. It's clearly stated in the document what the amount of the ketubah would be. And therefore the witnesses were clearly trying to create that loss of money. So you will evaluate it by the value of the ketubah, deduct the 4,000 what they would have given the woman, and that's how much in our case a $6,000 payment would have to be given. But the fact that the woman brought into the marriage other properties that were not written in the ketubah, other properties that the husband would, that remained the property of the woman. She brought in, her father was a very wealthy man, and she owned a lot of property, and she brought in a lot, and then many things were in her name, and she brought this into the marriage. And it doesn't belong to the, but the husband has rights, as long as they're married, to eat the fruit of that property. It still belongs to the woman, but the rights, as long as they're married, belongs to the husband to eat the fruit. If when the husband passes away, the property goes, he has no, the fruits don't belong to the kids. They belong to everything that goes to the woman. Or if the husband divorces the wife, everything goes back to the woman. But as long as those properties, as long as the guy's married, he gets dividends, he eats the fruits of that property. So now that he eats the fruits of the property, so when the witnesses come and they say, Reuven divorced his wife, so they were going to take away that ability for the husband to eat the fruits of all those properties that his wife brought into the marriage. Those fruits of those properties, as long as he's married, that's a big value of those fruits of the property that he would be able to eat on a regular basis. But we're not going to estimate that as part of what the witnesses wanted to do to the husband. Why not? Because that's not clearly known. What is it? It's not written in the ketubah. So it's not written in the ketubah. The witnesses could say, the law is you got to do to us what we want to do to the other guy. We had no way to know, or since it's not clearly known that we knew this type of information, we don't know what a woman, it's hard for us to know that there was other properties here that were going to be, you were going to be affected by our testimony. We clearly, what's written in the ketubah, there are witnesses signed on the ketubah, as you know, and there's witnesses, and then once there are witnesses, there is something called a poll. The word gets out. People see it, it's clearly defined, and therefore, you can't say, I didn't know what was in the ketubah. You knew, therefore you're responsible for what you wanted to frame him on the value of the ketubah. But something which is not written about, it's not written, we don't see any documentation, so there we're not going to obligate the witnesses for that type of loss that they were coming. When witnesses come to court, they say Reuven killed Shimon. Witnesses say Reuven ate not kosher food. It's clearly defined what they're coming to say. It's clearly defined. If you say Reuven killed Shimon, you want to create a capital punishment to this Reuven. It's your testimony. You know that this is the consequence of your testimony. But when you don't know, when it's not clear that the consequence of your testimony is that the guy's going to lose the right to fruits of his field, of his wife's fields, because it's not clear that you even know that there is such a thing, that the husband had, that the wife brought properties into the marriage. Therefore, we're not going to put that into the pot of calculation of how much the witnesses have to pay for framing the husband. I mean, the ketubah talks about the husband is responsible to take care of his wife according to. Different communities do different things. The Ashkenaz community, they have it's a certain amount of, right, it says a certain amount of, based on the, and some, I started to put in like an American money, some started to put in like American money. Ashkenazim put in just the old traditional money that's stated in the Gemara. Then you have to, a certain amount of weight of silver, and then you have to figure out that.
Okay, this plus this dollar amount, they're not put there.
It 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 just says it's a standard about how much the standard ketubah, and then the person adds a certain. There's a standard that everybody adds, and then it doesn't say about the personal other assets that the woman brings into the. It's not this. No, I'm not saying discount. I'm just saying it's just. I think that the Svardim today, I've seen by a certain Svardim guy that they put in a certain amount of money, right? They do put like a dollar amount, right? Ashkenazim just every different people, different amounts. The wealthier person will put in a larger amount, to show their love and they show that they're willing to accept. Really done on the side of like I want to put more cash. Again, it's written, it's signed, it's a real document that I was once by a divorce or whatever. I mean, the rabbis at the court wanted to know what's written in the ketubah. That's what the rabbis of the court wanted to know. That it's a real document, it's signed. A person has the ability to obligate himself to say, I'm obligating myself a certain amount. Well, force you sign. Yeah, if someone signs something. I don't know if a person can come to court and say, again, I'm not familiar with this enough, but to say to court, I was forced. When someone signs something, you can't just say later on, the person can't just say, I was forced to sign it. Maybe question would be if the guy right away would write a document of something and say something, I go in front of a few people and say I was forced to do this, maybe that's something to think. You'd have to look and see what the court would do with that. And now many years later, the guy wakes up and I was forced. You know what I'm saying? Right. So, but he gets the fruits. He enjoys the fruits of her personal assets, as long as the duration of their marriage. And these witnesses wanted him to lose that ability of enjoying the fruits as a married man, and therefore, but since it's not written in the document, it's not clearly known to the witnesses that we knew that we were creating this loss. Therefore, we will not obligate the witnesses that loss that they attempted to create to the wife. So I just said, Ms. David, that there's a standard amount of money, let's say, that's given for a woman that was not married before in the ketubah. There's a standard amount, and the Ashkenaz, and from the lady who was married before, it's a different amount. But they don't write in dollars. They just write the standard old-fashioned Gemara language of language type of language that they use. Then the different courts have to evaluate how to I think by the Svardim it's much easier in a sense because it's clearly written out. It's probably the dollar and cents. There's nothing so much for the court to evaluate when you're talking about American dollars. When you start talking about Meir Zekukim Kesef, certain types of silver, then you have to evaluate what that is exactly and the fluctuation of the market. So it becomes a little bit more complicated, I think.
Zuzim we talk about, no?
Right. So the Gemara says that ends that Gemara. Okay. Now, next Mishnah. Gimel Amanal. Me'idim anu b'ish ploni. We testify about a certain person, shechayiv lechaveru elef zuz, amanat litno lo mikana shloshim yom. Two witnesses come and say, we were there at the loan. There's a mitzvah to lend money. So to obligate someone to lend money. It's not just a nice thing to do, lending money. People need to realize it's one of the 613 mitzvot. You have a mitzvah to put on tefillin, you have a mitzvah to lend money. People don't realize that. The Chafetz Chaim wrote a whole sefer called Avat Chesed, love of kindness, and it's broken down into two divisions. The sefer, I think one division focuses. What do you say? It's an obligation, and one division of the sefer discusses focus. Like half the sefer discusses about loans, about the laws of loans and so on and so forth. The obligation of loan And in general, people need to realize that Hashem will take care, Hashem will take over the loan. You lend somebody money, doesn't pay you back, God will take over. It says, Malva Hashem Fonindal, the guy who lends the poor person money, Hashem becomes you become the lender to God in a certain sense. That God will take over and you'll be paid back. I know person many years ago, when money wasn't as maybe as today, people are easier to, people make money a little easier maybe than old days perhaps. And he lent a lot of money in those days. Not everybody paid him back, but God paid him back in many ways. So God knows how to pay back. Sometimes the person will be paid back in dollars and cents. Sometimes the guys will pay back in other things, other blessings. So people need to realize that it's a tremendous blessing. That the pasuk says you'll be blessed for lending money. So it's a great mitzvah that people who have, who are in a position or an ability to do, they should take advantage of that great opportunity. Now, it does also, a person has the ability to secure a loan, right? He wants to give a loan, he wants to take collateral, you can take collateral if also. That's also a possibility. A person has the ability to do that too. But if he's more concerned type of person. Okay. He says, witnesses come to court and they say, we're testifying. Good morning, everybody. Morning, Mr. Aining. Morning, Jake. The new Mishnah. We testified that Ruvain owes Shimon $1,000. He borrowed $1,000. Almanas that lo mikant ashlo shimyon. And the terms of the loan was a 30-day loan. You have 30 days to pay up, which the Gemara says the average loan is 30 days. If I lend you $100 and I didn't stipulate how much time it needs to be paid, I can't come over to you in 2 weeks and say, you give me back the money. I can't expect. The court will not go ahead and say, okay, you lent you the money, now 2 weeks later you have to give back the money. It's like if I told you I'm lending you for 30 days, the court's not going to say give back the money in 2 weeks. You said 30 days. So when you give a loan, the average loan is 30 days. It's the unspoken word. That's the norm of a terms of a loan. You want to make a loan for a week, you talk it out, then your obligation is after a week, because you stipulated a week. Unwritten is 30 days. The 2 witnesses come and say that's what happened here. This loan, the problem here was things weren't documented properly. That's always many of the time, as we know, even when things are documented, there's issues. When things are not documented, it creates much more issues. That's why I always tell people, business world, everything, document, everything, be written, everything should be a trace, because that's when you don't write things down, when things aren't clear, that's where all the issues, that's where many of the issues happen. So therefore, things, you do a building, you sell a building, you sell a property, you rent something, everything. The better the lawyer, the longer. I'm talking. Everybody knows I'm a little guy. I don't know anything about these things. But the bigger the lease, the better the lawyer has a law. Everything's in the lease. Everything's in the lease. I was once involved, and then someone asked me to help them out in a situation. The tenant forged what it said in the lease. That's how bad the tenant was. That's what type of tenant it was. But because he lost based on the lease, but the lawyer wrote a beautiful lease for the landlord. But so what did the tenant do? They forged. It said he made believe it said he quoted a paragraph in the lease that didn't exist. That's how far. I presume, Mr. Aney, you've seen people like this. Yes, you've seen people like this. So that's the what? You can take it tomorrow, right? But who's the best? What's the best? The best type of lawyer you have? He wrote everything out in the lease. So all the possible questions that happen were clearly in the lease. And then you win the deal. There's a question that's dispute. Let's go back. Let's go back to the lease. What does it say in the lease? And then you're doing good, right? Remember that, Nathan, okay? Now, so the Gemara says. So what did he say? 1,000. The witnesses come and say you owe $1,000 and it has to be paid up in 30 days. Who on that? And what does the borrower say? No. It was a 10-year loan. It wasn't a 30-day loan. Mikan from now on Eseshanim until 10 years. And then what happens? Subsequently, two witnesses come and they say that those witnesses that claim that the loan was a 30-day loan, and they say they were there. They witnessed the terms of the loan. They were there in the day that the loan happened in New York. We have two witnesses say that you guys were with us in China that whole day. You could not have witnessed that loan. Now you're claiming that you saw the loan take place in New York on that date, on January 1st, 2022. January 1st, after you were with us the whole day in China. And therefore, you are false witnesses, and you framed the guy. Now, we need to estimate what is the loss that, how much do the witnesses have to pay for saying that everybody agrees that he owes $1,000. The witnesses wanted him to pay the $1,000. The false witnesses want him to pay the $1,000 in 30 days instead of 10 years. Now, the commissioners are going to say there's a value to a person to have a loan to pay out over 10 years than to have to pay that loan in 30 days. And that's what the Gemara, the mission, how do we evaluate that? Now, we know there's something called ribbit. We can't charge, we're learning with Jake yesterday, but what do you mean how can we say a value on that when a loan for 30 days and a loan for 10 years, I can't charge any interest, whether I give you a 30-day loan, Jew to Jew, can't charge interest in a 30-day loan. I can't charge interest between a 10-year loan. So what is the Mishnah saying? What's the value between a 30-day loan and a 10-year loan? If, anyways, I can't, the lender or the borrower can't pay more money for a 10-year loan than a 30-day loan. He's forbidden to pay him more than the face value of the loan. Because if he pays anything more than the face value of the loan, he's paying interest. So there are a couple of approaches to this question. One approach is, that's again, before we say the answer to the question, we're going to just finish the reading of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Omdim. See the language of Omdim. Omdim is we evaluate. Kama, how much Adam, a person, Rotze, would be willing, litain. How much would a person be willing to give? The biyado, and it will be in his hands. Elevzus, how much would a person be willing that he would hold, that he will have $1,000 by him? Beinosnan, whether you give them, mikan v'ashloshim yom, whether the terms of the agreement is a 30-day agreement, beinosnan mikan v'ashloshim, or the terms are a 10-year agreement. How much would a person be willing to give to have it for 10 years instead of 30 days? So let's say $1,000. If I have to pay it, if I would get an extra 9 years and 11 months to pay up this loan, I would be willing to give an extra $200 on the 1,000, let's say. Right, depends exactly. But I'm just kidding. Right. Very good. So you have to say most probably what the average market at that time, like today we have something called interest rates, right? There's a certain interest rate that's the fixed rate that this is the normal. Now, there are people that give that charge higher rates. There's the people that give lower rates, but there's a certain standard type of, on the market type of rate that anybody. Right. So the question is interest here, right? Right. So that's so how do we address this? Again, first is what the Mishnah states. Now we have to understand it. First, the Mishnah states that you go ahead and you would.
Rabbi, good morning.
Good morning. Who is that? I can't see behind the mask.
This is Yaron. How are you, Rabbi?
Oh, Yaron.
Good morning to everyone.
Good morning, Yaron.
Where are you, Yaron?
We say hello. Yaron is joining us from overseas.
Kuala Lumpur?
$1 a day. Over 10 years, you, okay. I mean, it's similar to what the Gemara is saying. That's what the Gemara, whatever the difference the Gemara says that a person would pay to have it over 10 years than over 30 days. That was the loss that they wanted to cause him. They wanted to take away the ability to have a 10-year ability to prepay the loan. And the Gemara said it has value. So the question is, but as Jews to Jews, you can't charge for that. So one approach is that even though Jew to Jew, we can't charge for that. But in the world, in the non-Jewish world, that has a value. Ask any non-Jewish person in the street, how much do they pay for such a thing? So you wanted to take away from this person something that even though Jew to Jew has no value, but in the world, it has a value. And that's what the Mishnah is saying. The witness have to pay for that. The Torah says you can't charge for that value. The Torah is very nice to the borrower. The Torah says you can't charge the borrower for something that has value. Every interest-free loan, it has value that you're not charging for, correct?
So what we're doing, Rabbi?
Exactly. Practically, it sounds like it is interesting, but here we can't charge. It would come out like this. A loan, I can't charge interest. But for framing somebody for a certain amount, the penalty, right? Now, so Jake didn't like that answer so much. He didn't buy the answer, correct, Jake? I don't know if Jaime's buying the answer or not, but that's one approach.
Wait, Rabbi, can you repeat what's the approach?
The approach is that even if the Torah states, even though it's a fact that a Jew to Jew can't charge interest, but if it's a question of framing somebody and you wanted him to lose the ability to have the loan longer, we're going to look at that as a value. We're going to assess that you wanted to take away the ability for the borrower to having a much longer time period to pay out the loan. We're going to look at that you took a value, we're going to put a monetary value on that, and you're going to have to pay, the witnesses are going to have to pay for attempting to take that ability away from that person, the ability to pay a loan over a longer period of time. And that's not, it's not that Jew is charging Jew to interest. It's a penalty that we are giving to the witnesses for coming forward and framing a guy. But the penalty is usually exactly. So that's why exactly. So that's why Jaime doesn't sound like he's excited about the approach. And Jake also wasn't excited about the approach.
That doesn't sound right.
Right. He's paying the interest penalty, but the interest penalty would be, but it's not borrower to lender. Interest exists, right?
But in the case of a framer, he's being charged.
Right. And this shows you that interest has a value, but the Torah doesn't give us we're not going to charge that value. Everyone knows.
But what are you going to frame him with?
Loan is a value. There's a value to that, but we're not getting. That's what the Torah is asking of us. Don't charge that value to your friend. Jew to Jew, don't charge. Yes.
So,
heteriska is a way that instead of being a loan, that it becomes it's an investment. Mr. Aney, heteriska is the way that it turns it into an investment. That the terms of it's no longer a loan, and therefore it's an investment. It's not a loan. But loan to loan, Jew cannot. So therefore, it has to. It needs to be explained.
Rabbi, maybe they become partner.
So, and Mr. Aney, if you ever do a heteriska, you have to make sure that it's done properly, and you have to have the person who. I understand, but it's not. It should be. You should explain. It should be done in a way that it's not just a play on words. It should be done in a way that it's more than. It should be done in a. Yes, Jake, you were saying something, Jake. Want to say something? Yes. So but there's another approach. What's the other approach? The other approach is that the lender, what about if you're the lender and you lent $1,000? And the terms of the agreement was to be paid back over 10 years, right? You gave him a loan for 10 years. How much would you discount the loan? that he should pay it back in 30 days. What's the value to the lender? I made an agreement. I gave 10 years. It's clear. I made a loan for 10 years. I'm the lender. And interest-free loan. Right. I gave an interest-free loan for 10 years. But then I, the lender, realized, you know what? I really need the money back. But I lent it for 10 years. I can't ask for the money back for 10 years because I made, that was the stipulation of the loan. But I want to, you know what? If you give me back the
Rabbi,
loan,
Rabbi,
then I'm
it's
going to
like the
discount
Shmita.
you. I'm happy. Give me back 800 out of the 1,000. I need the money now. The lender could offer a discount. Tell the guy, I'm asking that has a value on the market that a person would give that, and that amount of money. That's how we could assess what the witnesses wanted to do to the person. How is that between a 30-day loan, a 10-year loan, is how much the lender would have been willing to discount, and that amount he has to pay to the. No, the lender, I'm giving a discount. A borrower can't give more back to the lender than what he received. The lender has a right to say, I want less back. That's no problem. I say, giving back.
So Rabbi,
I have the lender has the right to say, I want back less money. There's a value.
That is based on.
Rabbi,
Time value of money, they call it net present value discount. Discount tomorrow, dollars today, you have to have an interest rate to figure out what that.
True, but I, the lender, have a right to ask to give. So therefore, I'm not violating. Right. Okay, but right, but that there's no Torah prohibition for a lender to ask for to give back to get less back, and that's what the Gemara is saying. That amount would be the amount. Okay, we're gonna have davening now.
Rabbi,
Any Gemara, Mr. Safdie?
Rabbi, Rabbi, do you hear us?
What is a mid?
We're gonna figure it out.
I don't think Rabbi can hear you, Yaron.
Rabbi,
Yaron, you wanted to say something? I'm sorry.
yes, I wanted to say that the Gemara is trying to find out what will be the minimum that the Zomimim they are supposed to pay.
Right.
This is the
correct.
second Mishnah, or this is the same as yesterday?
The second Mishnah, correct. Yaron, give them out. The second
Okay.
Mishnah.
Okay, very
Nathan, take it. Yaron, someone wants to say hello to you.
Nathan,
They
what's
have
up,
Wi-Fi
Nathan?
over
Good
there? They have
morning.
Wi-Fi there?
Yes, yes.
They have? Okay, good. Hi, everybody.
They have the
Akiva, good to
Wi-Fi
see
and they
you.
have Zoom, and they have Zoom also.
Very good. Akiva, good
Thank
morning.
you, Rabbi.
Yosef, good morning. Everyone have a great day, everybody.
Morning,
Rabbi, have a
morning.
good
Good
day.
day, my Rabbi.
Morning. Morris, what do you think? We said you're going to talk about today buying insurance policies. We have it in the Gemara already. Right? Akiva will be in touch. Have
Okay,
a
okay,
great day.
Rabbi.
Have a
All
great day. Bye-bye.